everybody. I'm excited to share with you guys what Jesus was telling the disciples many years ago. In the world today, we are troubled by many things. Let's be honest. Things that's on the news about war, about raising grocery prices, about the weather. There was like this big ice storm where I live. There's snow. We're worried about family, finances, future, and the list goes on and on. And this affects our mental states, which causes fear and anxiety and worry. And in this devotional, Jesus is talking to the disciples in John chapter 14. Let not your heart be troubled, believe in God. He was getting ready to depart out of the world, and he said he was going to prepare a place for them. Jesus knew that as humans, they would have emotions. Just 2 chapters before this, in John chapter 12, Jesus, he said his soul is troubled. What should I say? Father, save me from this hour. No, it was for this reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify thy name. Jesus, he felt troubled in his spirit about the future, about going to the cross. Can you imagine the emotions that he was having, knowing that he was getting ready to go to the cross to be crucified? He knew it was getting time for him to be crucified, so he felt troubled in his spirit. He was giving the disciples a heads up, and he was getting real with them on how to handle his emotions. And so, like I said, the disciples, they were probably extremely sad. Jesus was getting ready to lead them. They trying to make sense of all this. Like, wait a minute, Lord, you're not going to be with us anymore. Where are you going? So now let's look at when Jesus says, let not your heart. What is he talking about when he says your heart? Our heart or our emotions is not just a physical organ in our body, but it's the center of our being, our emotions, our will, our feelings. You hear all these different things going on in the world, and sometimes we start to panic, we start to stress, but Jesus is saying, do not allow that to happen. So now we're going to look at what it means when he says, let not your heart be troubled. Let's look at that word, troubled. It means to be stirred up or agitated. And we're going to go in a little more depth about that meaning. I hope you guys are, sticking with me and following along. And you can even grab you a notebook and take some notes. And so in the ancient Greek literature, when the surface of a lake or sea was stirred up by wind or storm, the Greeks would say the water was tarso, or troubled, or agitated, or disturbed. So what's the opposite of stirred up or troubled? It's stillness, or peace, or calm. And later in this chapter, in verse 27, it says, peace I leave with you. That's Jesus speaking. He's saying, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and be not afraid. Jesus is peace. He's also talking about harmony, unity, a state of being joined together, rest from inner conflict. It comes from the root meaning to join or to bind together, pointing to the idea that peace only flows through when we have a relationship with Jesus. And the second part of this verse, in verse 27, also says, my peace I give you is free. So why not take advantage of Jesus' peace that is only going to benefit us when we are troubled? The world today can only offer us temporary peace. The best way they know how to give it is through overindulging in alcohol or drugs or the love of money. And Jesus also says, believe in God, believe also in me. Jesus is saying you have to believe in him. You got to rely on him. You got to trust in him. And you also got to believe and trust in God. So remember, we can apply what Jesus was telling the disciples many, many years ago at this dinner right before the feast of the Passover. You know, trouble can bring about worry and anxiety. I know, I mean, I can so relate, you know, in the past when you've been going through things, you're troubled, you up all night worrying about these things. But let's grab a hold to what Jesus is saying in this verse. Let not your hearts be troubled. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good day.